let's do this. So if we go to slide 2, immediately we will see the first assumption that scientists make. And let me be clear from the beginning. When I say assumptions, what I really mean in my mind is something like an axiom for a mathematical theory. So it is something that you take for granted, and you cannot prove from within the theory. So the consistency of the theory depends on it. The dynamics of the theory depends on it, and you cannot prove it from within the theory. Its validity is given as an initial step. That's what I have in mind. But I didn't want to write axiom because it's not really an axiomatic construction that I'm going to propose. So the first one is the universe is ordered, and ordered between quotations because whatever order you want to think of as order, every scientist trusts that there is some order in wherever we are living. This universe, this being that we are in, it is ordered in a way. What do I mean by order? I mean it's just a collection of relations between the objects of the universe, and these relations, they are, we will see later, we discovered as well, or we posit actually, that they are fixed, etc., etc. So these relations exist. This order does not depend on us observing. So whatever is the relationship between the objects of this universe, this existence that we are in, they do not depend on us being here. They do not depend on us observing it all the time. They don't depend on our intelligence. They do not depend on our understanding of these beings. They exist the way they are, and it is our job to discover them. This is the attitude of the scientist. Now, you can adopt other attitudes. You can say, oh, it is us projecting our wishes and our understanding, etc., onto the universe. But sadly, this will run you into trouble with the mainstream scientific, let's say, method. And we can talk about that when the idea is a little bit clearer later on. The order is intrinsic in the world. It's not something that we just woke up one day and found. It's been there all the time, and we cannot know that, right? It's an assumption as well to make that. And here I have a question: is it real in the universe? Is it not? So when I say real, does it can I go in the universe and find something material that codes for the constants of nature or the speed of light, and it doesn't have to be using our mathematics. It's just that, is it a real fact? Is it something tangible that we can touch? Or is it something else that has a higher nature? I'm not really sure. But what scientists majorly assume is that it is there. What level of existence, where do we place it in the ontology? We can talk about it. But everybody should assume that it is out there, independent of us. Because once you make it dependent on us, then you run into trouble for example, saying, oh, I flip a coin and it's heads or tails, but I'm not going to look. So it could be elephant. Nobody assumes that when you're doing math or science or physics, or things are the way they are, independent of your presence there. This is the assumption. We cannot prove this. Why? Because we will fall in circularity. So how is it that the universe has order, you can ask? Why? How did we know? Well, we discovered this by induction. If you haven't been in this room that we did, it's been a month now, so because we took a long break over Christmas and Happy New Year. By the way, Happy New Year to everybody. I haven't seen some of you guys since then. So belated Happy New Year, I guess. So induction here, I don't mean the electric induction, and I don't mean mathematical induction. What I mean is simply by observation and taking notes. So you see, you leave the cup of water on your desk, and you come back tomorrow and you find it where it is. You drop something and it falls at a certain speed, and then you drop it again and it falls exactly at the same speed with exactly the same acceleration, etc., etc. You discover that two magnets repel each other with a certain force. Tomorrow you repeat it, someone else repeats it, and it's the same. So how did we discover that this universe has this order? We discovered it by induction, by trial and error. All right, how did we know that induction works? How did we know that trying something today and trying it tomorrow and trying it a week later and trying it in a different place and having someone else write, how did we know that all of these things give the same result? Well, because the universe is ordered. Why would it change? So you fall in this circularity of how do you learn about the universe? You learn by induction. How do you learn about induction? Using that principle that the universe is ordered. It's not random. It's not changing in front of us. It's there, and whatever we know of it is somewhat fixed. All right. So this is why we cannot say, oh, this is just something that we can prove. You have to start somewhere, and this is why I included it at least as one of the major assumptions that we make whenever we're doing science. We start from a place where the universe has a certain order, and it is our job to discover it. Anyone has anything to say here on this point?
Just only, I mean, I so far you're saying all these things. I think you've basically said it, but I came to the conclusion, actually talking with anti-science people and religious folks on Clubhouse, that I needed to come up with what it was, what were my base assumptions. And I've been really comfortable with the conclusion I came to, which of course is pretty much what you've been saying here, that the assumption I make is that there is an objective reality. And I think the evidence for that is the fact that science works. Science couldn't work without there being an objective reality for us to explore. I don't hope I'm not. I'm probably just recapitulating. I hope I'm not getting ahead of the game. I never know with
Not at all, no.
philosophers.
No, not at all. You're totally. The thing is, even when I wrote these, you will see that we will repeat each point several times, somewhat, simply because they are intertwined. So detailing them on a piece of paper, if I'm writing a scientific paper or something to publish, it would be one page. But now that we're having the discussion, I thought let's detail them and let's open space for people to talk about it. Hello, Ayo.
Hey, yeah, I was just going to say to kind of I think what John was saying, that the whole idea kind of emerged when we noticed that, like, hey, you're breaking something with the stick. I can also break something with the stick. Holy shit, we can get the banana, right? So I always am reminded of that simple principle of experimentation and just watching somebody else do it, and that's very nuanced because obviously. I hope you touched on this, but the idea of an observer kind of becomes very, very nuanced indeed.
Let's move to slide 3 and to the assumption number 2. The assumption number 2 is that this order that we spoke about, we are able as human beings to discover it. That's a different point. First point was that the order exists, independent of us. Next point is that we have access to it. It could be the case that we live in a universe where we don't have access to it, right? No, we do have access to discovering at least some of that, some of the hidden, let's say, mechanisms of the universe and the existence we live in. So it is intelligible to human beings. All right, our brains are capable of doing the job, and not only our brains, but our senses as well. Scientists hate using, depending on our senses, because they know very well that our senses fool us all the time. And this is what you will experience when you are in a magic show, or this is what you will experience when you are under the influence of some substance, or when something happens too fast. Or our senses, they suck. But we must rely on them at the end of the day. Oh, you're using a microscope. You're looking through the microscope. Oh, you're having a computer look through the microscope. Yeah, you're looking at the computer screen. The input that you are getting as a scientist, and we will talk about your role as an observer in a minute, but that input relies eventually on your brain, right? Your brain, your analysis power, let's call it, and your senses to give it input. So these things are trusted by scientists. They have to. It's not a choice. And at least we can gradually start to discover, using those two things bit by bit, to uncover the secrets of this existence, this order that is in the universe. And we are doing well. We're talking now. I'm sitting like thousands of miles away from you guys, and we're talking as if we are in the same room. in fact, we are doing better than this. You can see my video, and you can see something that I've printed and I've made a couple of days ago, etc. So we're doing fine, right? This is not bad. Why is this an
Yeah,
assumption?
man.
Because just 1 second. Why
Yeah.
is this an assumption, and we have to include it in assumptions? And why can we not prove it? Because the scientist has no reason to proceed facing the difficulties of scientific discovery if we do not take it as an axiomatic attitude, as an absolute belief that we are able to understand the universe. Problems have remained unsolved for hundreds of years, and thousands of years of civilization have been compiling them. And some problems we're just discovering now. If we do not include it as an assumption, if we don't include it as an axiom, as a basic belief that we are able to unlock these secrets, there's absolutely no reason to continue. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to continue. We should halt immediately. The scientists should halt and say, all of the things that we don't know, we cannot know. And this is kind of an attitude that is somewhere in the history of philosophy of science, mainly kind of fixed by Immanuel Kant, when he drew the distinction between what he called the noumena and what he called the phenomena. So noumena is like the thing itself, the essence of the existence, right? The sun as the sun is. And phenomena is what we experience. And for him, what we experience is only part of the existence. And there's that other part that we can never understand because we can never reach, because of limitations about our brains and our languages and our senses, etc., etc. We're not going to talk about Kant today. I just wanted to mention that this is an attitude that you can have, but this is not the attitude that the scientist in the lab has. The scientist in the lab has the attitude that they are able to discover, and once they do not have that attitude, they leave the lab. All right. Anything about this? Carlos, you say you've been discussing noumena and phenomena the last 2 weeks. Is it like in a room, or is it with other people? Is it like in a teaching kind of activity? What's it about? Let me know. If you can come up on stage as well.
And I just wanted to comment, Shamash, I'd never heard of noumena before.
Oh, really?
That's yeah. No, so that's I didn't realize that phenomena was that. That's pretty good. I mean, that's a
you should watch.
I'll start
Should
using it
watch
along with entailment.
There's a wonderful channel called the Scientific Discourse, and the word has been mentioned there a couple of times. You should give it a sub.
Maybe I missed that. Yeah, no, it's true. If you've said it before, I've been washing my car or something.
Yeah, probably. Hey, Carlos, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, no, it's funny you brought up the phenomena noumena because as I say, I was just on Clubhouse with friends discussing the topic of this phenomena noumena because, like you said, the science kind of relies on our senses being accurate, or that we assume that our senses are accurate when we talk about truths of the world. But if our senses were different, like we were a bat or a dolphin that uses echolocation, we'd have a different like perspective of reality, and we'd have different truths based on those senses. So and that's a different type of phenomena. But yeah, the noumena that can't be reached is that's the part that interests me.
Yeah, it is an attitude again, and if I may give my personal opinion here, I cannot rule it out. There could be an 11th dimension that we cannot access, right? There could be a 15th dimension. I don't know. But all I know is that if I'm going to include these in my theory as possibilities, and within the theory also, I'm building it in a way that I'm discovering, we will see in a minute later, whatever interacts with me is reality. So this interaction is kind of a condition. And if these things are by definition uninteractable with, why do I need this as an object in my theory? This is where I have a problem with it. Not that, rationally I can prove that these things can never exist, but what use of it is to assume that there are certain things that you can never access. If I can never access them, let me worry about whatever I can access. So from a pragmatic sort of standpoint.
Hey, just a quick question. Have you ever covered logical positivism? Is
Not
that your
yet,
view?
not yet. No.
Okay.
When I'm kind of postponing it because I need to. I'm trying to invent this course, right, on the fly, right. Every week, I kind of think what is the most logical step. So it's kind of down the pipe, but I'm not sure when. At some point, of course, we have to do logical positivism, and we have to do what's the other one? Hypothetical deductivism. So those are down the pipe. If you're interested in hardcore philosophy of science, stay tuned. Slide 4, the third assumption. This order that we can access, it is final. It is fixed in time. Once we discover it, once we discover those properties, those relationships, those patterns in the world between its objects, we assume that they always have existed before we discover them. And they will exist, continue to be the case, I mean, not exist in the sense that they are ontologically the thing. I don't want to go there. But at least that they will stay the way we discovered them after the fact that we've discovered them. And these are so deep in our scientific philosophy that we use this kind of assumption as a test. So there are the two major tests for validity of any scientific hypothesis or theory is that it is repeatable and it is predictable. Okay? Repeatable in the sense that if I do it tomorrow and if I do it in another setting, if I do it by someone else, and it gives the same result. It is reproducible. And why is this the case? Because it's this order that we're discovering is final. If it's not final, then it could change, and we cannot do this. And the other one is it makes predictions, and those predictions turn out to be correct. And so looking back at the past, this was the case, and looking into the future also, we assume that it will also continue to be the case. Without this assumption, scientists will never be able to use previous results. Science is built from our history as 10,000 years ago, the dawn of civilization, when we knew very little about the universe. And it has been compiling and compiling. Whenever people discover a bad plant that you cannot eat, they put it in our scientific knowledge. Whenever they discover how to make a bigger fire, they put it in scientific knowledge, how to make better buildings, right? And so it has been compiling. If we do not assume that what our parents and our grandparents and our forefathers have discovered works today, why do we use it? Then every time I have to walk in the lab, I have to make sure that gravity is still the same, that electromagnetism is still the same, that I don't know, the chemical reactions and the laws of which chemical bonds with which all of those I have to test for all of those to be the same. And once I'm finished testing for all of those, I have to repeat the testing, because now the distance in time between the first experiment and the last experiment I did has to be a couple of hours at least. So now how do I know that what I discovered a couple of hours works as well? I got to start again.
Yeah,
So
welcome
we
to
just assume.
calibration. Just the joke is that when you were describing that, I was like, hold on, that actually does sound like calibrating some equipment. By the time you get all the constants and match it to what is in the tables, you've spent like the morning setting up the equipment. So I really appreciate calibration at this point.
Yeah, right. Anybody who has stepped foot in a lab remembers that. But we made a joke like a couple of episodes ago about the unlucky scientist. I'm kind of that guy. I'm very how to say, clumsy in the lab. So I remember having trouble, for example, with oscilloscopes. I've never been able to make one work. They just refuse to to operate properly. So anyway, this is it. So there is order in the universe. This order is accessible to us. And number 3, this order is fixed in time to the past and to the future. Yes.
One thing about because I don't think you mean this exactly when you say the order is final, fixed in time. Um, that's a you have to be careful. There's lots of good reasons to think that even the quote constants of the universe may change with time, but that's a little bit different from, I think, what you mean to say, which is we discover some relationships which depend on these constants. The constants themselves may change in time because we don't really know where they came from. That'll be something that maybe we'll find out in the future why the quote constants change in time. And when we do, that fact of why and how they change in time will be something that's fixed in time. If you
Yeah,
feel
that's like
me.
the fine structure constant. A friend of mine does work on the derivation of this from like kind of more analytical approach rather than empirical. And Tia and a few others have done work in this area trying to, just derive the constants just from mathematical constants alone, which is an interesting exercise. But it's one of those questions that where do these magical numbers come from? At the end of the day, I don't think we have a great answer for why the fine structure constant is the way it is.
But when we do, if we ever do come up with an explanation for why it's what it is, that explanation will be fixed in time,
Or parameterizable.
presumably.
It might be parameterized with the age of the universe.
This is what I'm trying to call order here. I realize the word is very metaphysical, but this is what I'm trying to capture. So that whenever we make this discovery is assumed to be true until proven otherwise or until it changes. So probably the scientist would not say, "Oh, whatever we know now is the final truth." Nobody would say that because science is continuously evolving. But also, no scientist in their right mind will question everything that other people have already been establishing and discovering. So you will be more than free to use whatever people have discovered before you. And then if you stumble by accident that whatever they discovered is not very accurate, then you improve on it. But whatever has been proved has been proved. That's it. So whenever people talk about Newtonian mechanics, oh, like Newton was wrong, like wrong in what context? Okay, in the context of his time, right? With the equipment that they had, with the observations that they had, he was on point. We became better as a result of what he discovered. And this applies to everyone else, right? Whether it is medicine, whether it is technology, whatever. We cannot say, oh, the computers of the 80s weren't computers just because ours are way better. They were computers, they were weaker, right? But at the time, this was the pinnacle of computing. And you cannot say, oh, I'm not going to use it because it depends on the computers that were before, and then the computers that were before were kind of crappy, so my computer is now crappy. Nobody accepts that logic, right? This is what I mean, the order is fixed in time, John.
Yeah,
Right.
Newton's.
I just think it's really important to understand that the universe itself isn't fixed in time, right? And we know why that is, so we don't really belabor the point. The reason that the universe is not fixed in time is a thing that is fixed in time. In our theory, right? We have a theory. That theory is fixed in time, and it predicts that things in the universe are not fixed in time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, with what you were saying to Newton, yeah, I like totally agree. I mean, Newton's equations, they still work. They're still accurate to some degree. We just have a more accurate explanation of what's going on to account for the data. But yeah, I think we're just talking about like the problem with induction is that, the future will continue to act as the past as we understand it, right? I think that's really what's happening
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the main idea. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think
Uh,
science for me is not that complicated for me. It's you come up with an idea based on some experience that you've had, and you test that idea, right? And as long as you're doing that, you're doing science. I think we do it all the time. Like this morning, sorry, yesterday morning, I wanted to have some toast and I had some bread left. But I thought that because of the time I've had it, it may have gone stale, right? So if my idea is correct, then there's certain predictions that I would expect to see if that's correct, and then I check to see the bread if there's any moldy spots on it, and lo and behold, there were some moldy spots right at the corner of the bread. So my idea has been tested and it's been shown to be correct, and I think we do this all the time in our daily lives without even thinking about it.
the thing is, even people who don't think about it, they have to align. So this is a great segue for point number 4, if you follow me on slide 5. So aligning our actions with the order that we've discovered is good, and it promotes survival. That's point number 4. So even the people who deny this order, even the people who don't know about it consciously, even the people who fight it consciously, at the end of the day, to be successful, one of the scientific cornerstones is that the most successful way you can do something is the closest way that aligns itself with the order of nature. Okay. Now, of course, some of our bridges that are built to the best of our abilities still fall down. Some of our airplanes still fall down. Some of our rockets explode midway, right? That always will happen. But what this point, what this axiom, what this belief is not that whenever you do it the right way, absolutely it will work. Sometimes you don't have the right way. You think you have the right way and you don't. But what this says absolutely is that whenever you know that you have the right way or some version of it, and you choose consciously to do something else, or unconsciously because you don't know, you will absolutely fail. You will always end in a disaster if you choose to build your bridge without the right amount of concrete, without the right amount of... You can try the right amount according to your theory, and if the theory is fine, then it will stay up. And if your theory is not fine, it will fall down. But if you have a theory and you've tested it and you do the opposite of it, then of course you will not succeed. Hi, everybody joining us. We're talking about the assumptions that are present in our scientific understanding. And we have reached number 5, this order that is in the universe, that we have access to, that we can understand and describe to some level, right? And it is stable, again, to some level, to a very reliable level. This same order has the property that the same conditions, if you arrange them, if you arrange a certain state of the facts in this universe, and you prepare this nice experiment in front of you, those conditions will always yield the same results. This is kind of also a basic assumption that every scientist in every lab will have. When you find a different result in a lab and you thought that you have arranged the conditions in the same exact way, you automatically assume that you haven't, and you start looking for the quote unquote hidden variable. So whenever you find that this is not the case, you start looking, did I miss something? And there is this attitude in quantum mechanics that we kind of have missed something, simply because people like believing that the same conditions always will yield the same result. Yes, John, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe this is a good time for me to get in advance, because I see what you're coming to, and I just wanted to make this comment because I think it's relevant right now. And that is that quantum mechanics, on one level, it's not the case that if we set everything up exactly the same, we will get the same result. In quantum mechanics, that's just not true as far as we know. But what is true is that the predictions of quantum mechanics will always be observed. And that is that if you do the measurement many times, the results will converge on this many times you get this, and this many times you get that, et cetera. So the predictions of quantum mechanics are still predictions that we assume will be observed by everybody. When people do Bell's tests, they do many measurements. They get statistics on the results, and those statistics agree with what quantum mechanics says they should be, even though in each individual measurement, you get a different result.
Absolutely. Quantum mechanics is this very odd theory and we'll talk about quantum some more in assumption number 6. That this understanding of it only happens after you kind of zoom out. So you have to take a series of experiments, a huge collection of them, to kind of see what's happening. Whereas with 2 or 3 experiments, usually, because we kind of see that the same exact result is obtained, then we're much more comfortable generalizing from an experiment in a lab than we are comfortable when we're doing some experiment in a very quantum kind of setting. I need your help one more time, John, actually, before we move to number 6. The spatiotemporal frame, so the space, the coordinate and space and time of the experiment, and the person running the experiment are also assumed most of the time, if not all the time, to be not factors. So whoever does the experiment, wherever they do it, whenever they do it, we also kind of say, oh, they published the paper, let me test it again. They probably found something interesting. So we never kind of, at least, as long as you don't include social factors, oh, I know he's a fraud, I know he's a liar, etc. We kind of take things face value, and we assume also that these things are never factors. Is it also the case in quantum mechanics that the spatiotemporal setting doesn't matter, doesn't participate?
Yeah, I think in the sense that you want, but I would just point out that even in relativity, really, that's not true. It matters where you do some experiments. But the point is that part of the point of the theory is that it makes predictions about why it matters where you do an experiment. And so part of what we experimentally test is it really the case that a clock runs slower when it's on the surface of the Earth than it does when it's in space? And then we test that prediction, et cetera. So, I mean, I don't think that's really what you're talking about, but I'll point out that the place and maybe even the time at which an experiment takes place can matter. And then the question really is the law that predicts it, does it give the right results? Is it, so I think it's a little too simplistic just to say that it never matters where or when you do an experiment. What matters is that to the extent that where and when you do the experiment does matter, your theory explains that.
There is a particular interpretation of quantum mechanics called superdeterminism, on which it matters every single time. There's no independence between who does the experiment, where it's done, when it's done, and between the experiment result.
Yeah, that's right. And that's one of the supposed loopholes in the Bell's tests that Sabina Hassenfelter is particularly enamored of.
So
That's a pretty wild claim, the superdeterminism thing. That's weirder than any other interpretation I can think of. I'm not sure what problems it fixes.
I wouldn't say that, Hero, and I'll tell you why. Because in fact, the way I see it, at least, is we accept this principle of the same conditions yield the same result, even though the same exact conditions and the same exact results can never be reproduced. Not once in the history of science have we been able to reproduce the same exact conditions with the same exact results. But we are happy with good enough, and we are happy with classes of events instead of singular events taken with maximum sensitivity. The more plausible explanation for me, and the more rational, quote unquote, attitude, is to do what Agamemnon was talking about, and take them with what I will call maximum sensitivity. Every single event has a coordinate in space and time exactly, and those properties, especially when you're doing quantum mechanics, are extremely important. And I don't see how saying good enough there kind of cuts the deal, simply because we've been doing it before, and we're just like, yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, an error of 2 meters, whatever, that's fine. Simply because we were doing that before, I don't think it's wise to continue doing it in the case of quantum mechanics. But again, when you don't do it, then you don't have repeatability. And so whatever you discover in the past can never be tested or used in the future, in which case it kind of halts. Alrighty. Assumption number 6. The universe behaves the same way towards all observers and experimenters. That's another one we just talked about, where usually it is assumed that whoever, whatever, because some aliens could be doing science, some computers could be doing science, whatever does the experiment will get the same results. So it doesn't depend on my perception. And this is why science cannot disprove, for example, the success of magic. A magician can be on stage and they're performing a trick and something disappears completely. Something appears out of nowhere, and this contradicts, the laws of thermodynamics, for example. But what we can say as scientists is we can always look at this and say, oh, there's something going on here, because our laws that we've discovered and we assume that they are constant, are being broken here in a sense that is leaving us no explanation. So without this explanation being given, we automatically assume that there is, quote unquote, a true, real scientific explanation somewhere. We just don't have access to it now when we are sitting in the magic show. But of course, it's a trick. Things don't appear out of nowhere. Instead of saying the other option, which is, oh, this person can make things appear and disappear out of nowhere, because scientific experiments do depend on the person doing them. We don't have that attitude. And again, I'll leave the mic to the scientists on stage. Can you talk more about this quantum mechanical sort of thing, John? Where our observation, it's kind of a social meme at this point. Oh, when you look at it, it's something, and when you don't look at it, it's something else. Is it really the case in quantum mechanics that it behaves according to who's observing, or is this something inflated in our culture?
I'm. Are you hearing me?
I am.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I am driving right now, so I will talk while I'm driving, but I'll be a little harder to get for a little while here. I guess the only thing I wanted to say about that is just once again that, well, so I think you're talking about what's called the measurement problem, and that is a problem, right? It's a I shouldn't say it's a problem. Quantum mechanics does just fine. Shut up and calculate and all of that kind of thing. But there is this question about what it is that makes, that is there, if the hidden variable thing, if you want, what is it that makes all of the possibilities that quantum mechanics gives probabilities for, possible results that it gives probabilities for, what is it that happens when you actually make the measurement and now the quantity that you've measured is now exactly determined? Those probabilities now go away. It's referred to as the collapse of the wave function in the Copenhagen interpretation, whatever you want to call that. And that's what's, again, as I say, you can do quantum mechanics without worrying about that. You can just do it and it works. But there really is a philosophical question about what's going on there. So maybe that's enough for now.
Benjamin, I kind of, yeah, thank you, John. But Benjamin, I kind of name dropped you a minute ago because we were talking about, we were talking about quantum mechanics, and I saw you on stage and you kind of left very quickly in the quickest way possible. You famously have a problem with quantum mechanics from many angles. I don't want to talk about the data not being published today, but I do know that you have a problem with quantum mechanics because it violates, I don't want to call it principle, but a very general, let's say, assumption that people make as scientists, which is that the same exact conditions create the same exact results, and they are repeatable, and things don't happen randomly. They always have, and I will talk about causality in a minute here, but they always have this chain of events leading to them. And quantum mechanics so far does not give us this chain. Rather, it just posits that things happen sometimes. And if you can just summarize your pitch.
Certainly Bohr posits that, right? And determinism was famously at the heart of the dispute between Bohr and Einstein. And some people, I think, rightly observe that this motivated the reasoning. Bohr felt that determinism left no room for the human spirit, and Einstein found no alternative other than the fact that the things that happened repeatedly must be predicated by some property, which property is real and could be sussed out. That was his understanding of science, really. If you want to put Einstein's scientific definition in a nutshell, it was that anything that is repeatable is caused by something that is real. So yeah, that's the difference. I just, if I could, just for my own name's sake, I don't have a problem with quantum mechanics. I have exactly the problem with quantum mechanics that Einstein had, which is a problem that the standard model does not respect locality. And that means two things largely. It doesn't respect the inverse square law, and it doesn't respect the notions of time, just the way that John was saying earlier, that Newton did not appreciate the consequence of time, that gravity cannot be an instantaneous effect. So Newton appreciated the inverse square law. In fact, he may have first been the first to express it, but he didn't appreciate the time factor. Einstein appreciated both, and that's where I'm at. I think I'm right there with Einstein. We're doing like the three-man race, the three-legged race with Einstein. You know, we got one leg strapped together. I'm right there with Einstein on this. And I just, if you could reflect my position that way in the future, it would avoid a lot of me having to re-explain it. I don't have a problem with quantum mechanics any more than Einstein had a problem with quantum mechanics. What you're getting now from the practitioners, in my view, is storytelling and hand waving at data, and nobody looks at the data, nobody cares about the data, and even if people don't bring their data,
Okay.
nobody knows,
Come
right?
on, you're
So
kind of a
it's
little bit harsh, don't you think? There's one guy who didn't bring the data. Other guys were fine.
no. All three of the people for the
All
for
three.
that
All right.
Nobel
The
Prize
three people.
have lost their data.
All right. All right. I don't want to get into the data thing here, but thank you, Benjamin. Yeah. So this is the
If you don't want to get into the data, then you don't want to get into quantum, because that's what quantum is. Quantum can only be understood at the data layer.
I
You can't do
want
an
to get into the
experiment and look
data.
at the
I
results.
don't want to get into the debate whether the data was fraud or destroyed because it's useless. That's what I
Yeah,
don't
but
want to
look,
get
if you
into.
have a dice, and you roll the dice, right, you could get a 5. But getting a 5 isn't going to tell you whether the dice only has 5s, or if you rolled a honest die and you got a 5, right? You're only going to know whether you have an honest die if you roll the dice a lot, right? So you can look at the dice all you want. It's not going to tell you whether it's an honest die. The only way you know it's an honest die is if you look at the data. If you don't know how to look at the data, then you can't have a conversation about honest dice. You can't. Go somewhere else. Have a conversation about flowers or something. But if you can't understand data, you can't have a conversation about honest dice. And if you can't talk about dice, you can't even begin to roll up a table in the quantum mechanics room. Okay, so just don't.
Fair enough. Number 7. So we're halfway there. And I'm gonna go a little bit quicker here because we kind of get the hang of it now. Number 7, the 7th assumption that scientists tend to make is that all existing entities interact with us. So this is kind of an ontological here assumption. Our awareness of this interaction between us and the objects of the universe does not affect the interaction. It is when we become aware of it that we record this as a discovery, that we record this as an interaction. We record it as a new object. It's added to our scientific warehouse. The plague, for example, of the 14th century, the people at the time had no idea what's happening. They all assumed that they were being punished by some god because they are sinners, etc., etc. None of them had the idea that a very small living being, the bacteria, and I have the name here, it's called Yersinia pestis. Yersinia pestis. None of them had the idea that this bacteria was causing the disease. Today we know, but we also assume that back then they had that bacteria. We don't know that, right? But we kind of say, oh, back then, because them not being aware that it was a bacteria did not affect that interaction with the object. Okay, this is what I'm trying to express here. So what every existing entity is interacting with us in one way or another, and every non-existing entity also does not interact with us in any way. And this is how kind of this is very broad actually. If someone knows what they're talking about, they will hate me. But very broadly, this is kind of a physicalist or materialist, I want to say, account of the world. This is what science posits as existing and not existing. If it can detect it, if it can interact with it, then yes. this is an object. If we cannot interact with it, then no, it is not an object. And this is a bigger discussion on scientific ontology that we will have a room for it. What's the difference between realism, the indispensability argument, all these things. It will happen at a later episode, hopefully. But what I really want here is that this assumption, it rules out also, just like we ruled out magic in the previous assumption. This assumption rules out the acceptance of every metaphysical agent. By metaphysical, I mean above and beyond the physical universe, meaning it does not interact in a physically detectable way with our instruments, with our senses, with our whatever. And this is why science, and this is a problem that also I might have a room about it, but it has nothing to do with, well, it is a little bit a philosophical issue, but it's more like a belief issue here. I hold the position that science cannot disprove the existence of God. We cannot disprove anything that does not exist. We don't know where to start, but it only rejects it. It rejects it because a metaphysical agent, by assumption, is rejected in science. The scientist will only accept the existence of objects that are interacting with him or her. If an object is not interacting, if an entity, I want to say, is not interacting with us, then we will reject it. And since we have not been able to detect the interaction of God yet, then we cannot accept this as part of the ontology. Once that interaction has been detected, then God will be brought from the metaphysical realm to the physical realm, and then we will be able to interact with it in the same way that all 6 premises that I have mentioned before kind of work. So anybody could access that. It doesn't matter on the observation. We will discover that before we were interacting with this metaphysical Zeus god or Shamash the god or whichever one you want, but now we understand that we were interacting with it before, and before we did not have evidence, but now we do. So this is kind of a general, very naive way of constructing scientific ontology. There's a lot to be said here, but I'm going to leave the stage to you guys to see what you think about this.
Sorry, there's a lot of background noise. I know right now where I am, but I just wanted to say that was very well said. I mean, I just maybe to put a slightly different take on it. Right, I agree. If once we recognize the thing that somebody wants to say really is God, right? We now scientifically detect something that we want to, for some reason, call God. It's like, well, why are we doing that, right? God is supernatural. Science deals with the natural. And so we don't deal with God. We don't disprove God. We reject it, just as you said. And the moment that we get evidence of it, well, now it's not God. Now it's not supernatural because science doesn't deal with supernatural. Doesn't mean science gets everything right. It just doesn't deal with it.
I would go further and say it would subsume it. It would absorb it. So if there was something, quote, supernatural, I mean, quantum, entanglement and tunneling and all that seems not natural, but we know it, we can repeat it. So if God, interacted physically, we would just say, oh, it's physical now, it's natural, and it's not supernatural because it's been subsumed by the word. And the word natural is, it's a construct.
Well,
I'm happy that you... Sorry.
I would have a third opinion on this, which differs from my friends here. I would say that if in science we mean the literature, the academia, the budget, right? So allocated. Then science has done a pretty good job of interacting with the supernatural. I think that quantum entanglement is supernatural. We don't have any natural explanation for it, so we have to say that it is beyond the capacity of us to explain it. Right? That's the same as supernatural for all intents and purposes. Now, there are claims about that. There are claims about the supernatural. Two particles, infinitely separated, instantaneously communicate. This is peak to jowl, the same as the Omni claims about God, and to the same effect. And in my opinion, with the same approach, same techniques, preaching, sermonizing, storytelling, repetition, and this weird kind of orthodoxy gatekeeping, where if you don't agree, then you're not one of us, kind of thing. It's kind of no true Scotsman problem. So I see the same thing happening there. I think it happened in string theory, and now we're all appreciating that Leonard Susskind has been sermonizing about string theory for what, 50 years, with no more to show for it than Joel Osteen. So what are we talking? Why do we make the distinction? Science is just as capable of making up shit and storytelling as the Catholic Church, and nobody has shown me evidence otherwise.
Do you guys think that if someone makes a supernatural claim, like, I don't know, like ghosts exist or God exists, like they have access to the divine, that you couldn't use science to show that it's true or false? Like, I mean, if it was actually true that you had access to some divine being, and then you started doing things based upon that, like you might not explain, like, I don't know, like I can go into a cancer ward or with people that have terminal illness or something like that and start healing them at a rate that's like, greater than chance, or maybe all of them, I don't know. But that, I don't think that the scientific method excludes the supernatural. I think you could make this a supernatural claim, or claim there to be some other type of thing, um, and use the scientific method to show that it's true. If it was actually true, I think science would be the best way to show that it's true. The fact that it's supernatural is just a label that we've placed upon it. We put things in that category, such as gods and angels and demons and maybe ghosts, unless you want to say that's paranormal. Some people say that ghosts are supernatural, but spirits, those things are supernatural. And if those things did actually exist, science would be the best way to show that it's true. So I don't actually agree that science excludes the supernatural. It's just that the only reason it rejects it because there's no reason. It hasn't made any like predictions. It doesn't help to
What's
explain
the evidence that
anything.
it rejects it? Is John saying so, or
But there's no evidence, Benjamin. I'm trying to
the
posit
Nobel
this as
Prize was
a
given in
assumption, as an axiom. You know
2022
what I mean?
for the supernatural? I mean, that's what the Nobel Prize in 2022
Oh,
is.
come
It's the Nobel
on,
Prize
bro.
for the supernatural. Come on.
But about the so I mean, don't we agree with like the Karl Popper falsifiability and all that sort of stuff? And it's scientific methods that construct too. So you could say that somebody believes in Bigfoot, and then science could say, oh, where did you see him? And there's no footprints, and no, you didn't see him. So science could say maybe no, you didn't see a ghost, but it's really difficult to say that Bigfoot doesn't exist. It's very difficult to scientifically prove a negative. So I think that's the same problem with the Bigfoot. Bigfoot may exist.
That's what I'm trying to say, and I'm happy you mentioned this, because either alien, let's say, sightings, or Bigfoot, or the Loch Ness monster, or whatever these are kind of events that happen once, or at least a limited amount of time. And you come to the scientist and you tell him, okay, there's this guy Jack. He walks in the hospitals and he starts healing people randomly, right? And if you only believe in Jack, then you will be healed. Otherwise, you won't be. And so what does the scientist do? Well, the scientist wants to put Jack in a lab and see what's really happening. The scientist will always look for the assumptions, the mechanisms that are that fit the worldview of science, the mechanisms that are hidden, and they are repeatable, and they are understandable by us, and that they are generalizable probably. So we will look for those factors rather than to say, oh, listen, this guy is special. It will never be the scientist's attitude, not because scientists are stubborn, simply because science will not work if we start saying, oh, this is a special case. Once you allow one special case, you have no reason to not allow all special cases to be every single event, in which case you stop doing science. Science is about collecting classes of these events and establishing relationships with them. And if you start including special cases, then you will say, oh, yeah, this is a special case of gravity. This is the special case of electricity. Yeah, why is this magnet attaching to the metal hand of my camera here? Well, because there's the god of photography, and this is making this happen. You can do that, but you're not doing science at that point. Allowing for these special cases ends the scientific endeavor immediately.
Sorry.
Well, here's an interesting question about that, Shamash. For 50 years, has the scientific community been doing science with respect to string theory? Has that been 50 years of science? Or what? What were the clues? What were the
It
early clues
depends.
that it wasn't
It
science?
depends.
Or was it
This is a
science
very
up until last week and then it stopped being science?
Well,
Like
this
what happened there?
this is a tricky business, Benjamin, because if it's going to drag me into saying, oh, the scientific understanding of the world only deals with the real objects. And I don't want to say that, because we're going to make constructs every single time, and the way we establish meaning is through a third hand, right? So we have these semantic rules that say, oh, I have these objects in my theory, and then there's objects in the real world, and then there's a pairing between them, etc., etc., and then I'm doing work on those objects, not on the objects of the real world. If you say, well, strings have never been observed, can I say that the people who are working with those objects completely metaphysically, they are being completely metaphysical? No, because every scientific theory works with objects that don't really exist. I can ask you by the same token, does an electron exist? And that's a very difficult question to answer. So I don't want to open that discussion today, because that has to do with another branch or another kind of topic, because it has to do with the meaning and the way the scientific world understands the meaning of their theory. Join, it's wonderful to listen to you talk about physics. You do run rooms about physics weekly. Can you tell us more about them?
Yeah, but thank you. Do come on Fridays to my Bites of Physics, which happen at the same time as this room. What is that? 1730 UT, is that right? Yeah, 1730 UT, whatever that translates to you. At least this time of year at 1730 UT. Let's see. But I will say, and you can. I should put a link up. I may get to that. This Friday, I should mention, 2 days from now, I think Ben Tristram is going to run my room. I talked with him this morning because I'm not going to be able to do it. But we do Bite of Physics. We've done about 70 of them now. There's a collection of them. Shamash is so kindly putting them on YouTube these days, so they're accessible there on the Scientific Discourse channel. And what else can I say? Yeah, come to the Bites of Physics. It'll be fun this week. Ben always runs rooms that emphasize even more accessible physics probably than I do. So come one, come all.
Great, fantastic.
Let me also just say,
Any?
one of these days we're going to get Andy to do a Bite of Physics on
Oh,
LiDAR, which I'm kind of looking forward to. So keep
me
twisting
too.
his arm too.
Oh yes, fantastic. Andy, whenever you're ready, the audience is ready for you, man. Anything else from anybody? Any other matter? Any other question? I'm moving towards closing the room. It's been 3 hours since we live. Wow. Okay, great. Hope that this was nice, and that you guys enjoyed the discussion. And yeah, I hope to see you next week as well. Same time, same place, Philosophy Wednesdays or the Scientific Discourse House, 1730 GMT. Have a nice one. Enjoy. And see you next week. Bye-bye.